Everybody, it's me, your buddy Dave, the host of the Dark Stuff channel here on YouTube. Thanks a lot for checking out my latest video. And in this week's video, I was able to see two of the most all-time classic 80s alternative bands, the Psychedelic Furs and the Jesus and Mary Chain. I was able to see hometown heroes Cursive kick off their most recent national tour with a two-night stand at the Waiting Room here in Omaha. In addition to that, I've also got news on the Bangles and Matthew Sweet. I want to talk briefly about the recent deaths of both Paul Di'Anno from Iron Maiden and Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead. As if you could handle any more, there's also new music from SNOWMEN and the Mommyheads. I've got a new playlist from my New Day Rising radio show and so much more. Please don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. So let's move over to the Astro, where I saw the Psychedelic Furs and the Jesus and Mary Chain. They've been on a co-headlining tour here in the States. It finally hit Omaha or La Vista, and there was an additional artist playing named Frankie Rose who opened the show. Never seen either the Psychedelic Furs or the Jesus and Mary Chain, but in full candor, you know, the Jesus and Mary Chain are a band that is a lot more significant to me musically than the Psychedelic Furs. The Psychedelic Furs are like a greatest hits band for me. That's mostly what I know, whereas I own multiple albums by the Jesus and Mary Chain, so I was just a pinch more excited about seeing them. I was invited to sit up in the owner's box of the Astro, and where that's located is on the very, very far right, up in the balcony, and it's a great spot to listen to music. It's not a great spot to film stuff or shoot video because you are at such an extreme angle, so I didn't get really much good footage of Frankie Rose. It was kind of difficult to film her. Didn't help that her set, she performed practically in the dark with just like a screen that had a mini strobe, like that was it. Jesus and Mary Chain were up next, and it was sort of having the same problem. They were kind of playing in the dark, and it was very hard to see from our angle. So we had a couple of friends who were on the floor, so we left the box and actually went down onto the floor into the GA area, which was much better in this particular instance because I could see straight on, and I could see both of the Reed brothers because I'd only seen one of them when I first started watching the show. Down on the floor was better, but the band was still virtually playing in the dark. I mean, it was it was a lot of blue, a lot of purple, a lot of whatever, a lot of black. It was definitely done that way on purpose because when I posted a photo on my Facebook, and I said the Jesus and Mary Chain pretty much performed in the dark, and everyone was like, yeah, that's the way it was in this town. That's the way it was in this town. It was like that over here. So I guess that's how they do it. It's fine by me. I mean, they're older, you know, maybe they don't want to see everyone to see all the wrinkles on their I don't know, I'm just guessing. Speculation, total. They played for 70 minutes, and so a full headline set. At one point, Frankie Rose came on and did a song with Jesus and Mary Chain, and it was great. I mean, I guess I got what I expected. I liked it. I didn't love it. I thought it would be a little bit more intense, and you know, than the volume and just like screaming guitars and all this, and it wasn't quite that intense, actually. Furs came up next, and they actually understand how lighting works, I guess, because they had lighting on themselves, and so they were doing their thing, and they were really good. I mean, for a band that's even older than Jesus and Mary Chain, because the Psychedelic Furs started in the late 70s. I think they Only have two original members, the Butler brothers, the singer and the bass player, and they're the guys left over from the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. That's fine. I wasn't really a stickler for like who was in the lineup, who wasn't in the lineup. You know, I didn't really know, and it didn't really matter that much to me, to be honest. I do know that one of the guitar players in Psychedelic Furs spent a lot of time in Guns N' Roses. I think his name was Richard Fortas, and he played a long time in Guns N' Roses in the Tommy Stinson era, so I know from that. So while I was enjoying their show, and whenever they'd play a hit like Love My Way or something that I recognized, or something from like the Valley Girl soundtrack or whatever, I was always like, oh, cool, and I liked it for a minute. But then I realized that, yeah, I am kind of a greatest hits guy for the Psychedelic Furs, and I left probably about 45 minutes into their set, which I imagine was probably about 70 minutes, the same as Jesus and Mary Chain. So I don't know exactly what I was expecting, but I guess I got what I was expecting. It was an enjoyable show. I mean, I'm quibbling about the lights and stuff like that, but I mean, it's just because I bitch about stuff. But overall, it was a fun show. It was good. It wasn't great. It didn't blow me away or whatever, but I'm also not seeing Jesus and Mary Chain like in 1989, which I imagine it would have blown me away and probably ruined my hearing forever. A couple days before the Jesus and Mary Chain, I was able to see Cursive one of the nights of their two-night stand at the Waiting Room. Cursive's a legendary punk band from Omaha. They started in the mid-90s. They're still going today. Just released a brand new album called Devourer, and they were kicking off their national tour with 2 nights in Omaha. Now, what I didn't realize, and maybe I was told this and I spaced it or whatever, was that they were going to do 15 songs per show, and they were going to do 15 completely different songs each night. So Friday night was different from Saturday night is what I'm the more clear way of putting that. Well, I saw the Saturday night show, and it was great, although I did wonder why certain songs weren't performed, and I guess I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, that's because they must have been done on the Friday night. Was Criteria. Of course, this is a legendary band in Omaha. They don't play outside of Omaha very often, and typically they only do 1, maybe 2 shows a year in town. This may have been it. I don't know. The band is fronted by Steve Peterson, who is the guitar player and the singer, and he was a one-time member of Cursive back in the 90s. Their set was great. Relied heavily on their last album, and they did say they were playing a couple of new tracks, so I guess that means they are working on another album, but it was almost 20 years between albums last time, so I mean, don't hold your breath on that new Criteria record just yet. So Cursive was great. You know, I've seen these guys 10 or 15 times because they are from my, hometown. But I realized when I was watching them that I might have skipped out on the last couple of shows just because I thought, well, the crowds are going to be so overwhelming, and it's like, I don't want to deal with that shit and whatever. And it really wasn't that bad. It was full but not packed. And so it was kind of a little more enjoyable. I got to get right up front, right in front of Matt McGinn, the bass player. If Cursive shows are like this in any other city, but of course the crowd was singing along to half the songs when they're playing like The Martyr. The entire crowd is shouting along and stuff, and I know those are Cursive classics. Here in town, I don't know if it extends outward, but hopefully you have the same kind of experience that I did, where just the crowd was just so into it and so enthusiastic. They were singing along to all the old songs, and the new stuff sounded really good too. A little bit of more Bangles news. I did mention in a previous video how Susanna Hoffs is on the verge of releasing a new album called The Lost Record. It's stuff she did in the late 90s. It's out now digitally. The vinyl comes out at the end of November. I've already got that on pre-order. But if you'll remember to a video I did last February, it was a video on Matthew Sweet and Debbie Peterson from the Bangles joining him as the drummer on that tour. And I got to talk to Debbie Peterson for a little bit after the show. And in that, she told me that all of the Bangles had sat down for interviews for an official authorized biography of the band that she said would hopefully be out by the end of the year, meaning this year, 2024, or the beginning of 2025. It's actually happening. The book is now available for pre-order. It's called Eternal Flame. It is the authorized biography of the Bangles, coming out in February. They're taking the pre-orders. I'm super effing excited. I also found out that the author is a friend of a friend, so then we're going to see if we can parlay that into something. Don't know. As I referenced Matthew Sweet just there, you know, classic artist here, and that I saw him last February. That was about 8 months ago or so. Just came out that Matthew Sweet, while on tour up in Canada, had a what is being described as a debilitating stroke, and he's been hospitalized for this entire time ever since it happened a couple of weeks ago. There is a GoFundMe to raise money for him for his medical bills. Last I heard, he was still in Canada, and he was waiting to be sort of airlifted, maybe back to Nebraska because he lives here. From what I hear, I'd rather stay in Canada, honestly, but with the experiences that I've had recently with hospitals in Omaha, with my father who was in the hospital for about 2 weeks, I would say stay in Canada, but honestly, that's not up to me. But the GoFundMe link, again, is below. If you can contribute, that'd be great. But I feel really happy that I was able to at least see Matthew Sweet last February, because they're saying his performances might not be coming back, at least for the foreseeable future. My sights way too high. I want to talk, just mention this book real briefly, okay? It's called Owl, and it's a book of poems by this guy, David John Rosenheim. You'll see. I know Dave Rosenheim. I've known him for over 30 years. He used to be the frontman, guitar player, singer for this band called Hugh from San Francisco. Now, I have a personal connection to that band because I put out a majority of their music on my old label that I had back in the 90s called Mafia Money Records. So I got that book and I wanted to plug it, and it got me thinking about all of this sort of nostalgic stuff, and then I get an email from Dave saying they're about ready to put their music online on like the streamers, Apple and Spotify, etc. And so I decided now's the time for me to make my sort of short-form documentary on the band. So we're all working on that. I put together a little group folder where we could all contribute photos from back in the day, and that's been kind of cool looking at that sort of stuff. So that is on the horizon. I want to try and time it so when their music is available digitally, this little thing comes out and you can see some of the rare only video that we have back of them, because, you know, it was the 90s. Not everybody carried a camera in their pocket. Yeah, in the interim, I just got this book yesterday, so I can't honestly tell you what it's like, but I'm recommending it nonetheless because I know Dave as a songwriter, and I'm therefore just transposing this like I'm sure it's going to be good. Take your money. Buy some border. A couple weeks ago, I talked about this band that I discovered on TikTok called SNOWMEN from New York, and I was like, they only had one song, but it was so fucking awesome, and I've been plugging it. I bought it on Bandcamp, and I played it on my radio show and stuff, and I was just super freaking excited because they were kind of like a cross between Gang of Four and Pere Ubu. Well, they finally released a second song. The new song is called Profit Margins, and by the time you see this, it'll probably be on the streamers, but as of right now, it was just on their Bandcamp. This song is also incredibly awesome. It starts off all like synthy and kind of 80s, but by the end of the song, it kind of almost sounds like 70s funk jam and like mixed in with punk. And I mean, I don't know. It was really good. So again, I'm recommending them a second time. The SNOWMEN song number 2 is also quite good. Heavens, trying to pique the interest. I don't know if you can see the screen or not, but I am playing the new Mommyheads album digitally. That's also on their Bandcamp. It's called One-Eyed Band. You know I'll be talking more about it, but this is just a reference that I got it, and it is really good. and it's going to get your proggy sort of fans like really excited because it's their most sort of prog sounding record that they've ever done. They've been getting tagged as being a proggish band, and prog music fans like the Mommyheads, and I've never really understood that because I don't like prog, but I love the Mommyheads. But now I'm starting to see it because they are sort of moving in the proggier direction on this album. The great thing about the Mommyheads, though, is every album is different. You know what I mean? Like, so they do vary. So this is a proggy period. They could be doing death metal next year. I don't even know. And I just want to take this moment to point out that I do host a weekly 2-hour radio show on FM, terrestrial radio. It's called New Day Rising. It's every Sunday, okay, at 2 p.m. Central Time in the United States. It's 89.7 FM locally, but for everyone else in the world, you can stream it at 897theriver.com. Again, these are a couple of playlists from recent shows. I would love it if you would give me a chance and listen to it. It does not archive or podcast or anything. You have to listen to it live. That's it. And then lastly, I thought I'd just briefly address two kind of significant deaths in the rock world. So first up, I'll talk about Paul Di'Anno from Iron Maiden. He's the original singer of Iron Maiden. He died recently at age 66. Now, he actually left the band in 1981, so it's been a really long time since he was part of Iron Maiden. You know, the two albums that he sang on, the first Iron Maiden album and then Killers, are just so highly lauded in the Maiden catalog. I mean, most people still probably like, you know, the Peace of Mind and Power Age and all of that stuff, Power Slave. Power Age, that's AC/DC. That sort of era, maybe 83, 84, 85, whatever, that's probably considered the best. But I still love those first two albums. I still hold them really deeply. A couple years ago, I did a video about, I was doing a series of great debut albums, and I did a video on the Iron Maiden record, the first one. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if you didn't see it because almost nobody saw it because the algorithm screwed me out of the audience on that one because I didn't think anyone would want to hear me talking about Iron Maiden. So I did a video on Maiden, but it literally nobody saw it. I'm going to link to it again. Maybe you can watch it this time. I don't know. So Paul Di'Anno did provide something different in Iron Maiden that wasn't provided by Bruce Dickinson. That's not saying better versus worse. I do love those first two albums. I think it's a bit of a misnomer to say they're more punk, but a little bit. I mean, the first album's production's a little bit more punk, but they were never a punk band.
Like, there's a lot of that in there. It's very noodly.
That was there on the first album. Okay, it was. And Di'Anno has a lot wider range in his voice than he's given credit for, because some of his detractors are just like, well, he was like a punk singer, and, you know, they needed a singer with range. I mean, yeah, Dickinson has more range, but to say Paul Di'Anno didn't have any range, I mean, come on, fucking get out of here. So, and lastly, I think I'll comment on the death of Phil Lesh, who's the founding member, bass player of the Grateful Dead. Now, as I've stated many times, I'm not a Grateful Dead fan, and I'm not here to shit on the guy or anything like that. Far be it for me to do so. I would never do something like that. I did a video a little while ago explaining how I've tried to like the Dead, but it just doesn't work. It just doesn't take. Decades I've tried. And when Phil Lesh passed away the other day at age 84, I thought, wow, that's a pretty significant thing, but he lived a really long time, and 84 is not exactly a spring chicken. But I didn't really know what he meant to the Dead, you know, that much, but I watched a video on Professor Sky's Record Review channel, which is a channel I've mentioned before, and he mostly reviews like hip-hop and stuff, and like that's how I know him. But he made a really passionate video about his love of the Grateful Dead and Phil Lesh in particular, and why he liked Phil as his favorite member of the band. It's definitely worthy of a watch, and I will link to that below. And I couldn't really say anything any better because I'm not really a fan, but I just wanted to acknowledge his passing. All right, I think I'll wrap it up here, everyone. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care. We will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
So, you have a MySpace page or something?